Hi everyone, my name is Ani Montenegro. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be basically what my channel is going to be about. I have been a true crime junkie for a really long time, and I always wanted to start a channel to basically bring awareness to a ton of the cases that are out there. So many families looking for justice. My channel is going to consist of missing persons, disappearances, murder, anything true crime. I plan to have it here on my channel, and yeah, so I just want you guys to know that with these videos, my intentions are purely just to bring awareness to these cases and get these victims' names out there if I can. I know that my channel is not huge, but I still want to try to get their names out there and help in any way that I can. So without any further ado, let's get started. Today's case is going to be about the disappearance and eventual murder of James Berkeley Norris. James Berkeley Norris was just 24 years old when he went missing and eventually was found murdered. James was described by his family as very generous, loyal, loving, compassionate. He loved hiking, he loved animals, he loved nature. He loved the beach, and he enjoyed living by the beach and taking his dog Casalia, who is his true and tried companion, out for walks on the beach as often as he possibly could. He was very close to his family, especially his mom. He was absolutely devoted to her and loved her so much. He was also described by his family as a gentle soul with such a creative mind who was unforgettable. He touched the lives of everyone that he met. James, or Jimmy as his family lovingly called him, went on to graduate from San Francisco State University with a bachelor's degree and a lifetime teaching credentials in adult education classes. After graduation, he went on to continue his education, and he was also teaching English as a second language to non-English speakers who were seeking American citizenship. On October 3rd, 1974, Jimmy stopped by his family's house to ask them if they would be willing to watch his dog Casalia for 5 days, as he was going to be taking a short trip, and after those 5 days, he was expected to be back. He never disclosed the details to his family of where he was going. He just said that he was going to be gone for 5 days and then he would be right back. He didn't mention any side trips or any other places that he would be going to or stopping by. Eventually, those 5 days would come and go, but his family never heard from Jimmy again. On October 4th, 1974, Jimmy's family received a postcard from him, which was very strange because Jimmy was not known to send his family postcards anytime that he went out on a trip, which was quite often. Jimmy did take trips very often, his family stated, but he never sent them a postcard, so this was very, very strange to him, especially what was written in the postcard, and that definitely brought some concern to them. The postcard stated, "My favorite family, I hope you are well, and I hope that my dog is not preggers. Feed her as well as you please. I forgot to give you money for her keep. Take her to Dr. Miller if she needs attention. Be home soon, Jay." After time had passed and they hadn't heard from Jimmy, his family soon sprung into action. They began contacting all of his friends to try and figure out where Jimmy had gone, but his friends refused to give them any answers. So soon after, Jimmy's father decided to hire a private investigator, and this private investigator soon began his work, and he once again decided to contact Jimmy's friends to find out what they knew, where Jimmy had gone. And he was finally able to get them to tell him exactly where Jimmy went. Jimmy's friends finally stated that Jimmy had taken a red-eye trip from San Francisco to Miami after pooling $12,000 between him and his friends to purchase Colombian marijuana. Now, while marijuana was readily available in California, Colombian marijuana was starting to come into Florida at a price that basically California could not compete with. They stated that one of the friends from San Francisco had a contact in Florida that would basically hook them up with $12,000 worth of Colombian marijuana. They also stated that Jimmy had gone to Florida under the alias Richard Gunning. But this was the only information that Jimmy's friends gave his family. They stated that it was their assumption that Jimmy had basically taken the money and ran off with it to start a new life after not returning when he said he was going to. But his family knew that that was absolutely not true, because that was not Jimmy. Jimmy was not one to run away and abandon his mom, because he loved her too much. So with all this information, Jimmy's family decided to go to law enforcement, talk to the local police, and tell them exactly what was going on and give them all of the information that they had about their missing son. But unfortunately, after hearing everything the family had brought to them, they stated that not only was Jimmy an adult, but he was also allegedly engaging in illegal activities, so there was nothing that they can do. So eventually, it became the family's job to search for their missing son, but it would take 30 years before they would get any answers. But what the family didn't know was that something was going on 2 years later in Florida that they wouldn't come to find out about for many years to come. On April 16, 1976, just 2 years after Jimmy went missing, a bulldozer operator was cutting through the woods off of US 19 when he noticed an object on the floor. It caught his attention, so he jumped off the bulldozer to take a closer look at what it was, when he realized that this wasn't just any object, they were human remains. They immediately contacted law enforcement to let them know exactly what they had found, and law enforcement jumped on and got there immediately. But because these remains were too skeletal, the Citrus County Sheriff decided to contact the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Florida Department of Law Enforcement was a little bit bigger, and they had the means to basically assemble a team of specialists that would basically be tasked with trying to figure out who these remains belonged to. So this team decided to send off samples of the remain to have anthropological exams done, which basically they are going to use human anatomy to figure out the gender and basically try to create a DNA profile of this victim. So samples of these remains were sent off to the Florida State University's Department of Anthropology, as well as the Smithsonian Institution, for further investigation to see if they could possibly shed light on who this victim was. They were able to figure out that this victim had been a young man in his 20s who had been dead for approximately 2 years, and the manner of death was deemed a homicide. They also stated that the victim had received excellent dental care throughout his life. So with this, they decided to create a dental journal in hopes that a dentist would look at this journal and help them shed some light as to who this victim was through his dental records. Unfortunately, no other information came forward as to who this victim could possibly be, leaving detectives absolutely stunned, trying to figure out who he was and wondering if anyone was missing this person and what had happened to him. Unfortunately, not much more information came as to who this victim was, leaving investigators to wonder who this young man could possibly be, and did he have any family missing him or looking for him. But little did they know that just 2,300 miles away, he did have a family who was searching for him to no avail. Back in San Francisco, his sister, Rosemary Norris, had taken over the case for his family. She stated that throughout the years, Jimmy's disappearance really took a toll on the family, as it would on any family. Jimmy's sister took over the investigation and to trying to figure out what had happened to her brother, and she really dove into it. She started posting her brother into any missing person's website that she possibly could. She contacted law enforcement, medical examiners, and even web sleuths, just getting in touch with them, touching base to see if they could give her any kind of help. And in 2004, Rosemary decided to submit her DNA as well as her family's to the California Department of Justice's Missing Persons database in hopes that someday, if they did find her brother, her DNA and her family's DNA would be available to help identify her brother to see if they could possibly be a match. Rosemary stated that just the thought of her brother being in a box somewhere, labeled a John Doe, and no one helping him, was what motivated her to keep fighting to find him and to find what happened to him. But in 2009, something good happened. In 2009, a special agent from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement by the name of Dave Wilson became curious about this case that had been decades old. And though he knew that the odds weren't very good that he could take this case any further, he decided to take another look at it in hopes that modern technology could help shed some light into who this victim was. So Special Agent Wilson decided to send another sample of the remains to the University of North Texas Center for Human Identification because they were leading in forensic DNA technology. But it wouldn't be another year before they finally got some answers. Once the year had passed, good news came in, and they finally had a DNA profile. Now that they finally had a DNA profile on this victim, the next step was to search the missing persons database, and this was tasked to Special Agent Mike Kennedy. This would be Special Agent Mike Kennedy's first time using the database. But within 15 minutes into searching, he started to zero in on this specific profile and specific information that was on this profile, and he decided to go for it. He got in contact with the Department of Justice and asked them if they could send a sample of the DNA that was on the profile to the University of North Texas for DNA comparison. And by the end of 2010, they finally had a name to this victim, and it was James Berkeley Norris. Now that they finally had a name to their victim, they tasked Detective Tony DiTomasi with getting in contact with James's family to let them know that their brother had been found but was unfortunately deceased. And his sister Rosemary stated that although they were happy that they finally knew what happened to their brother and they could finally bring him home, it was still like losing him all over again. Especially because now they had to accept that he was officially gone. Now that they finally had a name to their victim and his family was notified, the investigation can finally continue, but because this is still an ongoing investigation, there's not much information out there as to where the investigation is at, what the detectives know. The only thing that we know is that Florida Department of Law Enforcement Special Agent Mike Kennedy and Major Scott Hardin from the Dixie County Sheriff's Office in Florida are going to be leading the investigation, and they did state that they're mainly focusing on a drug ring that was operating at the time that Jimmy went missing. They stated that this drug ring was operating out of Citrus County, Florida, and it was operating at the location where Jimmy's remains were actually found. They also recently released the names of some of the people that James was known to have been in contact with when he was traveling to Florida. These names are Dan Bever, Willis Gillette, who went by Will, and Mitchell Lazor, who went by Mitch. As I stated, these were the people who were said to have been involved in the case or in contact with Jimmy, or possibly both. Jimmy's family continues to fight to figure out what happened to their brother. In 2011, Rosemary and her sister Kathy were able to travel down to Florida to pick up Jimmy's remains and bring them back home to San Francisco to finally lay him to rest. Jimmy's parents passed away without ever finding out what happened to their son. While in Florida, Jimmy's sisters were able to talk to the media, to tell James a story, to get his name out there in hopes that someone would come forward to bring information, to say anything that they possibly knew so that they can close this case and that they can bring Jimmy justice. Jimmy's sisters went on to make a billboard in Crystal River, Florida, to put Jimmy's face out there so that anyone who may drive by who knows anything could call and give any information that they possibly can. This case is so heartbreaking to me because just by reading about Jimmy and seeing how his family spoke about him just touched me so much, and I can see how much his family loves him. I will try to leave as much information as I possibly can in the description box below so that if anybody out there knows anyone who has any information on this case can contact local authorities and can also help me spread Jimmy's story so that maybe we can bring him some justice. Thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. I appreciate it so much. I hope that you guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.